This is the organigram of the Green Climate Funds, the GCF board. So it's basically the one overseeing the whole fund. And then to the right are independent units. So we have three. And then you can see from the third layer down, this is the GCF Secretariat. This is how the GCF looks like. So what is the GCF board? It's basically the governance and oversight of the fund's management. So it oversees the whole operation of the fund. It approves the different policies, modalities, funding structures, how the fund flows, approves the policies, guidelines, the program, the project of the financial management of the fund, responsibility to appoint the executive director of the secretariat, and also appointing the heads of the different accountability units. It is independent, and of course, because it was born out of climate convention, it is guided and reports to the UNFCCC through the Conference of Parties. In relation to the composition, 24 is equal to 12 plus 12. The board is composed of 24 board members, half of which come from parties belonging to the developing countries and developed countries. It includes relevant and regional groupings such as in Latin America or Asia, and representatives from SEED, it's a grouping within the UN, and of course the LDCs, the least developing countries. There is alternate member of the board. Each board member will appoint an alternate member who are entitled to participate in the board meetings. They don't have the right to vote. It's really the principal member who has the ability to vote, unless if the board member is unable to participate in the board, then it's the alternate who takes the position. He or she has the opportunity to vote. So they're selected by the respective constituency or regional group within a constituency. So they vote among themselves. Like for example, if it's the SEEDs, they vote who will represent the bloc of the SEED, the small island developing state. There's a requirement. They have to have, of course, good understanding in the areas of climate change, have necessary skills in relation to this. And of course, the GCF is strong on gender balance, so there's to be consideration given to gender balance. And they serve 3 years term. And once the 3 years is up, then if the country, parties, or the constituency votes them, they can still continue sitting in the board. Chairmanship, 2 is equal to 1 is to 1. There are 2 co-chairs. One for representing the developed countries, one representing the developing country parties. The term is 1 year. Every year, the board, they come together and they decide to vote who becomes the co-chair, representing the developed and the developing countries. Decision making is generally by consensus. So the quorum now is 2/3. So if there's 2/3 of the 24 board members present, then there's a quorum, they can proceed. Around 3 board meetings a year. There can be in between sessions, in between meetings where board members come together and do some consultation, especially when agenda items are not finished for a specific board meeting. They're accountable also to the UNFCCC at the end of the year. When there is the Conference of Parties, they submit a report. Independent Secretariat. Currently, the headquarters of the Green Climate Fund is based in South Korea. The Secretariat, they're responsible for the day-to-day operations of the fund. They provide administrative, legal, financial expertise. They organize whatever the board decides, they implement, they operationalize this. And they do all of this accounting, reporting, managing of funds, etc., developing a work program for the whole year, operationalizing the project and program cycle process, and then of course the financial agreements between the approved accredited entity and the project, and carrying out monitoring and evaluation function. These are the current executive director and the director, Yannick Guimarec, and then Javier Manzanares is the deputy. It's important for us to understand who the IP focal point is and what the responsibility of the IP focal point is, because it is basically, as stated in the Indigenous Peoples Policy in paragraph 8, there has to be an IP focal point tasked with looking at how the policy is implemented. TOR of the IP focal point, officially they call it the Indigenous Peoples and Social Safeguard Specialist. It's dealing with leading in the development of the procedures, process, guidelines, toolkits in relation to mainstreaming Indigenous peoples' concern within the fund. The fund is able to comply with the Indigenous Peoples Policy and relevant safeguards of the fund, and as well as management system. it contributes to due diligence work. It also provides support, as well as implementation of policies related to the environmental and social management. The GCF decided to set up accountability mechanism. The purpose is to make sure that there's accountability, manage risks, and to evaluate the performance of activities to make sure that the application of safeguards is undertaken. And not only the safeguards, as well as internationally accepted standards are ensured in the work of the fund. There are 3 units: the Independent Evaluation Unit, an Independent Integrity Unit, and the Independent Redress Mechanism. So what is the IEU? It looks at what are the results of activities of the GCF and how is it being effective and efficient in relation to managing resources. So it's basically assessing the results of the activities, not only the projects, but all activities of the GCF. It undertakes independent evaluation of the GCF activities. It operates independently of the GCF Secretariat, and it directly reports to the board. The head of the IEU now is Andreas Ruman. The second independent unit, accountability mechanism, is the IIU, Independent Integrity Unit. So how does this differ from the other units? It's basically looking at ensuring that all staff of the GCF adhere to the highest standards of integrity. It investigates allegations of fraud, corruption, misconduct, and other prohibited practice as identified by the GCF. This will include, of course, anything that is coercive or collusive, abusive, conflict of interest, and retaliatory against whistleblowers. So there's a process by which somebody can file a complaint to the IIU. Of course, it reports to the GCF board and the Ethics and Audit Committee made up of the board members. So there's a small committee within the board where the IIU reports directly.